My name is Susan, and the night I walked down the aisle for the second time was not just about love. It was about justice. It was about showing the man who betrayed me that while he thought he had broken me, he had only forged me into someone stronger than he could ever imagine. When my ex-husband Martin sat in the front row of my new wedding, his jaw tight, his eyes burning with disbelief, I knew my revenge was complete. But to understand how I reached that moment, you need to know how my story began. I met Martin when I was 25. He was older, polished, successful, and he had the kind of confidence that fills a room before he even steps into it. I thought I had found stability, love, maybe even destiny. For 10 years I built my life around him. I managed our home, supported his ambitions, and waited patiently for him to keep his promise that someday, we would have a family. That someday never came. Instead, I found pieces of another woman in our world. Faint perfume on his shirts, lipstick on wine glasses I never owned, hotel receipts slipped into his jacket pocket. For months I doubted myself, gaslighting my own instincts. But the truth was merciless. I caught him one evening, his voice low on the phone, his laugh one I had not heard in years. He was speaking to someone named Lila. "You're my escape," he whispered. "She doesn't understand me the way you do." He did not see me standing in the doorway, my heart crumbling, my fingers digging into the frame to hold myself upright. I did not scream. I did not throw the vase sitting on the counter. I walked quietly into the room, took the phone from his hand, and listened to the silence on the other end as the woman hung up. Then I looked him in the eyes and said, "It's over." Martin scoffed, as if betrayal was too small a thing to end us. "Don't be dramatic, Susan. Affairs happen. You'll move past this." But I did not move past it. I moved through it, straight to a lawyer's office. Within weeks, the divorce papers were filed. Martin laughed when he signed them. "No one will want a bitter woman like you," he sneered. "You'll regret this." He thought he had one. But what Martin didn't know was that leaving him did not destroy me. It set me free. I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I went back to school for a business degree. I started a consultancy with a friend from college, Marianne, who believed in me even when I doubted myself. Slowly, the world that had shrunk around Martin began to expand again. I had clients, independence, a voice. And then, when I least expected it, I met Thomas. Thomas was not polished like Martin. He was steady, thoughtful, the kind of man who noticed the smallest details. Like when I preferred tea over coffee, or how I paused before crossing a busy street. He didn't try to control me. He stood beside me. 2 years later, he proposed. When I looked at the ring, I felt something shift inside me. This wedding would not just be about love, it would be about closure. Martin had taken years from me, humiliated me with betrayal, and dismissed me as worthless. Now he would watch me rise in front of everyone. So I sent him an invitation. The card was crisp, elegant, embossed with gold letters. His name on the envelope must have shocked him, but I wanted no misunderstandings. I wanted him there, front and center. Marianne frowned when I told her. "Are you sure, Susan? Do you really want him to have that power in your new life?" I smiled. "It isn't power I'm giving him. It's a seat at his own reckoning." The day of the wedding, I stood in the dressing room, the silk of my gown cool against my skin. My heart raced, not from fear but from anticipation. Guests filled the hall, music swelled, and whispers buzzed like electricity in the air. Then Marianne peeked into the room, her eyes wide. "He's here," she whispered. Martin. He had come. My breath caught as I steadied myself in the mirror. The man who thought I'd never rise again was about to watch me walk down the aisle, into a future where he no longer had a place. The moment Martin walked into my wedding hall years later, head high as if the invitation had been some kind of mistake, my mind flashed back to the night that truly ended us. The betrayal wasn't just whispers on a phone. It was a wound cut in broad daylight. It began on a Wednesday evening. I had stayed late at the office, balancing client accounts, the kind of work Martin never respected. To him, my career was a hobby, something to fill my hours while he closed real deals. I drove home with a knot in my stomach, the memory of that faint perfume gnawing at me. The house was quiet when I opened the door. Too quiet. Our kitchen lights glowed, soft and golden, but the sound of laughter carried from upstairs. A woman's laugh. I climbed each step slowly, my breath shallow, my heart pounding against my ribs. At the landing, I saw the glow from our bedroom. The door stood ajar. Martin's voice was unmistakable. "Don't worry about her. She thinks I'm at a client dinner. She never suspects a thing." The laugh that answered him belonged to someone I had never met. A stranger in my house. My vision blurred with rage, but my body was cold, deliberate. I pushed the door open. And there he was, shirt unbuttoned, his tie loosened, a woman curled against him on my pillows. For a moment time froze. Martin's eyes widened, his mouth opening in shock. The woman scrambled, pulling the sheets up, her face turning pale. I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply stepped into the room and said, "Get out." The woman stammered, clutching her purse, rushing past me without meeting my eyes. The smell of her perfume lingered in the hall like poison. Martin, however, had the audacity to smirk. "Susan, don't make this a scene. You've been so cold, so distant. What did you expect? A man has needs." His words cut sharper than the sight itself. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't ashamed. He was excusing himself, as though his betrayal was my fault. That night I didn't fight with him. I didn't throw his things onto the lawn. I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water and looked at him as he tried to explain away a decade of lies. "Don't you see?" he said. "She's nothing. You'll forgive me like wives do. Think of our friends, our reputation. Divorce will ruin everything." I finished my water, set down the glass, and met his eyes. "No, Martin. Divorce won't ruin everything. You did that already." The days that followed were a blur of paperwork, lawyers, and icy silences. He tried to play both sides, apologizing one moment, threatening the next. At the signing, his arrogance returned full force. "You'll never be more than this, Susan. Alone, bitter, invisible. You're nothing without me." Those words burned into me, but they also planted something stronger than pain. Resolve. I walked out of that office with my name, my dignity, and the freedom to rebuild. He thought I had lost, but in truth he had given me the chance to rise. Years passed. I built my consultancy with Marianne, poured my energy into proving to myself that I could thrive without Martin. And when Thomas entered my life, steady and kind, I realized I didn't just want to survive. I wanted to love again. The proposal came quietly on a rainy Sunday, Thomas holding my hands in our small kitchen. "Susan, will you marry me?" he asked, no grand gestures, just certainty in his voice. I said yes. And that was when the plan formed. I didn't just want a wedding. I wanted closure. I wanted Martin to see that I was not the shattered woman he left behind. I was stronger, happier, loved in a way he could never give. So I mailed the invitation. His name in gold on the envelope, the date circled in my heart like a battle line. When I saw him step into the church on the day of my wedding to Thomas, dressed in his best suit, his eyes scanning the crowd like he still owned it, a part of me clenched. But another part of me smiled, because I knew what was coming. Martin thought the day would remind me of what I had lost. He didn't realize it was designed to remind him of what he could never have again. After the divorce papers were signed, Martin strutted through town as though nothing had happened. He paraded Lila openly now, as if their affair had been justified all along. Friends whispered, neighbors stared, and I often felt like the one under judgment. But I knew better. Martin's betrayal was not just an accident of passion. It was a pattern, a selfishness that stretched through years of lies. And though the marriage was legally over, I refused to let his narrative become the truth. He wanted people to think I had been bitter, ungrateful, unlovable. I would show them otherwise. It began with the receipts. During the weeks after the split, I went through every drawer, every folder of our shared finances. I discovered credit card charges that had no place in my life, hotel rooms on evenings he claimed to be traveling for work, luxury jewelry purchased under the pretense of client gifts, restaurant tabs for two when he had sworn he was alone. Each bill was a thread, and together they wove a tapestry of betrayal stretching back years. I cataloged them carefully, tucking each into a binder I labeled the record. Not because I wanted to use them in court, we were already divorced, but because I needed the truth on paper. Proof that I hadn't been paranoid, that every knot in my stomach had been right. Then came the photographs. A friend of Marianne's, a photographer named Isaac, had once covered an event Martin attended. He casually mentioned to me over coffee that he had seen Martin there with a woman who wasn't me. "I assumed you knew," Isaac said gently. "I didn't know. But when he showed me the photos, I wasn't even surprised anymore." There was Martin standing too close to Lila, his hand brushing her arm, his smile wide and genuine, the kind of smile he hadn't given me in years. Isaac let me keep a copy. I slid it into the record. The final piece came from Marianne herself. She confessed one evening, her voice hesitant, that she had once seen Martin leaving a hotel downtown. He had spotted her across the lobby and immediately turned away, pretending to answer his phone. She hadn't told me then because she hadn't wanted to hurt me. Now she spoke with regret. "I should have said something. Maybe you would have left sooner." I shook my head. No. I had to see it for myself. I had to choose to leave. Otherwise, he'd still have power over me. And she was right about one thing: Martin had thrived in secrecy. In silence. Now the silence was gone. But gathering proof wasn't just about Martin's lies. It was also about documenting my own rebirth. I saved emails from new clients, testimonials from projects well done, letters of thanks from companies that had thrived because of my work. Each one was a reminder that I was building a life beyond him. That I wasn't, as he had said, nothing without him. The record grew thicker by the month. Not only a record of betrayal but a record of strength. When Thomas entered my life, I kept the binder tucked away. He never asked me to prove myself, never doubted me. But late at night, when fear whispered that Martin's words still lingered in the community, I would flip through the pages. The evidence told a different story. One of resilience, one of survival. And when Thomas proposed, that binder became more than memory. It became a weapon. Because inviting Martin to my wedding wasn't just about watching him squirm. It was about holding a mirror to his face. A mirror built from every receipt, every photo, every testimony. Marianne sat with me one evening, flipping through the record. "Are you sure?" she asked again. "This isn't just closure, Susan. This is battle. And battles always leave scars." I met her eyes. "I'm not afraid of scars. I'm afraid of silence. He humiliated me, dismissed me, betrayed me. Now he'll sit in a room full of people and see that I'm not broken. That I've won." The invitations went out. The dates circled closer. And one afternoon, as I returned home from work, I found something waiting at my door. A single envelope with no return address. Inside was a photo. Martin and Lila, standing together, smiling at some cafe I had never visited. On the back, written in his unmistakable scrawl, were 3 words: "You'll regret this." The photo and the envelope sat on my table like a silent threat. Martin's words, "You'll regret this," burned into me. He was never one to admit defeat. Never one to watch quietly from the sidelines. If he was coming to my wedding, he would try to twist it into his own stage. I couldn't let that happen. This wasn't just about marrying Thomas. It was about reclaiming my dignity. About making sure Martin never had the power to humiliate me again. And that meant I needed allies, people who could help me prepare for every possibility. The first was, of course, Marianne. She had been my friend since college, the one who stayed when others drifted away, the one who held my hand through the darkest nights of my divorce. She was skeptical when I showed her the envelope. "Susan, he's playing mind games. If you rise to every taunt, he wins before you even step into the church." "I know," I said, my hands trembling only slightly. "That's why I can't fight alone. I need you at my side." Her eyes softened. "Always." The second was Evelyn Ross, the lawyer who had guided me through the divorce. Sharp, direct, and unshakable, Evelyn had a reputation for dismantling men like Martin. I showed her the envelope. She examined it, then leaned back in her chair. "Legally, this is just petty intimidation. But symbolically, he's warning you. You're not just inviting him to witness your happiness. You're daring him to confront his failure. He won't handle that well." "So what do?" I asked. "Build structure. Weddings thrive on order. If Martin tries to create chaos, you need buffers. Ushers who won't let him interrupt, a planner who knows to redirect, and most importantly, proof that if he lashes out, it's his undoing, not yours." Her voice steadied me. She wasn't just a lawyer. She was a strategist. Then came Harper, Thomas's younger sister. Where Marianne was cautious, Harper was fierce. The moment she learned about Martin's threat, she offered herself without hesitation. "If he so much as looks at you the wrong way, I'll be there," she said. "You're not just marrying my brother, you're becoming family. And no one humiliates family." Her loyalty made me stronger. Finally, Thomas himself. For days I debated whether to show him the envelope. I feared it would cast a shadow over our joy, but keeping it hidden felt worse. One evening I laid the photo in front of him. He studied it for a long moment, then looked at me with calm eyes. "Susan, marrying you is the most important thing in my life. Martin can't touch that. He can sit in the front row, he can scowl, he can whisper lies, but at the end of the day you'll walk down that aisle to me. That's what matters." His certainty grounded me. Together we built our setup. Evelyn coordinated with the wedding planner to ensure security was tight. Marianne rehearsed with me every possible scenario: what to do if Martin stood up, if he shouted, if he tried to approach me. Harper organized ushers who knew Martin by face and would not let him disrupt. And I worked on myself. Each night I opened the record, flipping through the receipts, the photographs, the evidence of betrayal. Not to wallow, but to remember. To remind myself why I was doing this. I was not that silenced wife anymore. I was a woman stepping into her future. Unashamed, unbroken. The rehearsal dinner arrived. Friends toasted, Thomas's family embraced me, and laughter filled the room. Yet, in the corner of my mind, Martin's shadow lingered. As I left that night, Marianne slipped her arm through mine. "Tomorrow isn't just about vows," she whispered. "It's about closure. Whatever he tries, you're not walking into that church alone." I nodded, my heart steady. Tomorrow he'll see the truth. The morning of the wedding dawned bright, sunlight spilling across my gown as I stood before the mirror. The silk shimmered, the veil soft against my shoulders. Marianne fussed with my hair. Harper checked her phone for updates, and Evelyn confirmed the ushers were in place. Everything was ready. Then a knock came at the door. Marianne opened it and froze. A deliverman stood holding a single white box. Inside was a bouquet of roses, blood red, with a card resting on top. In Martin's handwriting were 5 words: "Till death do us part." My heart pounded as I stared at the flowers. The ceremony hadn't even begun, and already Martin had made his move. My hands shook as I held the photo. Martin wasn't just planning to attend the wedding. He was planning something more, and I would need every ally I had to face it. The roses sat in their box like a wound bleeding across white silk. The card, "Till death do us part," was the cruelest reminder that Martin still saw me as his possession. Marianne wanted to throw them out immediately. Harper wanted to tear the card into shreds, but I stopped them. "No," I whispered, my voice steadier than I felt. "We keep it. It's proof. And tomorrow when he tries something, we'll be ready." That was when Evelyn's plan shifted. She had already arranged ushers, planners, buffers. But the bouquet was different. It wasn't just intimidation. It was evidence of intent. She gathered us in the bridal suite, her voice sharp as steel. "Martin isn't going to sit quietly. He'll either make a scene or try to unsettle Susan into silence. So we use his arrogance against him. He thinks he's clever, untouchable. We'll let him write his own humiliation." "How?" I asked, my hands still trembling around the card. Evelyn smiled faintly. "By preparing for both silence and spectacle. If he stays quiet, he'll choke on the sight of you moving forward without him. If he erupts, the ushers will contain him, and his outburst will be remembered as his shame, not yours. Either way you win." Marianne leaned closer. "Susan, are you sure you can handle it? He'll glare at you from that seat. He may even speak. Can you keep walking?" I inhaled slowly. I survived a decade of his lies. I can survive a 20-second walk down an aisle. But inside, I knew it wasn't just about surviving. It was about taking control of the story. That night we rehearsed. Harper acted the part of Martin, shouting insults as I walked between the pews. The ushers, friends of Thomas's, strong and steady, moved to block her, redirecting, guiding me forward. We practiced again and again until my steps didn't falter, until my gaze stayed fixed ahead. Marianne clasped my shoulders afterward. "You don't realize it, Susan, but you look stronger each time. Like you're marching into battle." "Not battle," I corrected softly. Victory. Meanwhile, Evelyn prepared the legal side. She documented the bouquet, photographing the roses and the card, filing a copy with her office in case Martin's behavior escalated. If he crosses a line tomorrow, we'll have grounds for restraining orders, maybe even charges, she said. It comforted me to know there was a shield behind the veil. Thomas, ever my anchor, had his own role in the counterplan. When I confessed my fear that Martin's glare might shake me, he took my hands and said, "Then don't look at him. Look at me. That's the only face you need." His certainty steadied me. By the eve of the wedding, the counterplan was set. Emotional armor. I would carry the record, my binder of receipts and photos, in my heart, each page a reminder of why I had left Martin and why I was rising now. Physical barriers. Ushers trained to spot disruption would flank the aisle, ready to contain him if he tried anything. Legal recourse. Evelyn would be present, prepared to act if his threats escalated into violence or harassment. Support network. Marianne and Harper would never leave my side, their strength reinforcing mine. Martin wanted me to be unsettled, small, silenced. Instead, every move he made only built my case, my confidence, my control. The morning came. Sunlight poured through stained glass windows as the church filled with guests. I could hear the murmur of voices, the rustle of dresses, the tuning of strings from the musicians. Marianne peeked out the door and returned, her face taut. "He's here. Front row. Just like you wanted." My heart thudded, but I nodded. "Good. Let him watch." As the processional music began, Harper slipped the bouquet box into Evelyn's briefcase. "Let him deny it later. We've got the proof." The organ swelled. The doors creaked open. I gripped my bouquet, the real one, white lilies, and stepped forward. And there he was. Martin. Front row in a tailored suit, his mouth curved in that same smirk he'd worn the night I caught him in betrayal. His eyes locked on mine, daring me to falter. I took my first step down the aisle, his stare drilling into me. What he didn't know was that every step I took wasn't just toward Thomas. It was toward the moment Martin's arrogance would collapse in front of everyone. The organ swelled as I took my first step. My gown brushed the aisle runner like a river of silk, and the guests rose in unison. Every face turned toward me, but I felt only one pair of eyes, Martin's. He leaned back in the pew, legs crossed, smirk painted across his face as though he owned the day. For a moment I feared my knees would buckle. Then I remembered Thomas's words. "Look at me." I fixed my gaze on him at the altar. His expression was steady, calm, proud. The world narrowed to that look, and my feet found their rhythm again. Halfway down the aisle, the first complication came. Martin stood. Gasps rippled through the pews. He buttoned his suit jacket slowly, theatrically, and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Well, well, Susan. Doesn't she look radiant?" Shame it took another man to appreciate what I discarded. Whispers flared. Some guests looked confused, others embarrassed. My pulse spiked. This was exactly what Evelyn had predicted. An attempt to reclaim control. The ushers moved quickly, flanking him. One stepped closer, murmuring, "Sir, please sit down." Martin laughed. "Afraid of the truth? I'm not here to stop the wedding. I'm here to remind everyone who had her first." The words sliced through the church like broken glass. My chest burned, but I kept walking. Step after step. My eyes never left Thomas. Evelyn rose discreetly from her seat, catching the judge's eye. A retired family court judge who happened to be in attendance, a friend of Thomas's family. He nodded slightly. If Martin escalated, there would be witnesses with authority. Marianne hissed from the front row, "Sit down, Martin." But he only smiled wider. And then, as I reached the final stretch of the aisle, he did something no one expected. He pulled out a second bouquet. Red roses identical to the ones delivered to my room, and tossed them onto the aisle runner. They scattered at my feet, petals dark as blood against the white cloth. The crowd gasped again. A murmur rose. What does that mean? Is he threatening her? My breath caught. For a split second, the old fear clawed at me, the fear that he could still overshadow me, that his cruelty could still reduce me to nothing. But then Thomas stepped forward. Calmly, deliberately, he bent, picked up the roses, and set them on the altar rail. He looked back at me and said loudly, "You walk on lilies today, Susan." Not on thorns. The room exhaled. The guests clapped softly, awkwardly at first, then more firmly. Martin's attempt to steal the moment had twisted back against him. Still, the disruption left ripples. The priest hesitated as I reached the altar, glancing nervously at the roses. Marian squeezed my hand before stepping back. Harper whispered fiercely to an usher, who positioned himself closer to Martin. Evelyn wrote something swiftly in her notebook. The ceremony began, but my heart still raced. Every vow, every prayer. I felt Martin's stare searing my back. He was waiting, calculating. He would not stop at roses. And then came the second pivot. Just as Thomas and I turned to face each other for the vows, a voice rang out from the pews. I object. It wasn't Martin. A woman stood from the far side of the aisle, tall, elegant, with dark hair and cold eyes. She wore a crimson dress that clashed against the white flowers. I object, she repeated. This man cannot marry Susan while debts remain unpaid. The room froze. Murmurs erupted. Who is she? What does she mean? Martin's smirk widened into a grin. He leaned back, savoring the chaos. My throat tightened. I didn't recognize her face, but her words carried poison. The priest stammered. Madam, this is highly irregular. She raised her voice, sharp and clear. My name is Lila, Martin's partner. And I know things about this bride you don't want exposed. My blood turned to ice. Lila, the woman I had caught in my home years ago, had walked into my wedding. And from the look in Martin's eyes, I knew this was planned. For a heartbeat, silence smothered the church. The name Lila echoed in my ears like a bell tolling the past. The same woman whose laugh I had heard upstairs in my own home. The woman whose perfume had clung to my curtains long after she ran out that night. Now standing in my wedding, dressed in red like a flare of defiance. Martin leaned back, satisfied. His plan was clear now. He hadn't come alone. He had brought her. This was his ambush. The priest stammered. This is not the time or place. But Lila cut him off. It is exactly the time. You all should know who Susan really is. She hides behind this image of strength, but she's a fraud. She tried to play the victim when in truth, she was the cold wife who drove her husband into my arms. Gasps spread through the pews. Guests turned, whispering, eyes darting between me, Martin and the woman in crimson. Martin's grin widened. Tell them, Lila. Tell them the truth. My hands trembled, but then I saw Marian stand. Her voice rang through the silence like a whip. Truth? You want truth? Let's give them truth. She turned to the ushers. Bring it forward. Two of them carried a leather-bound binder. The very one I had built for years, the record. Receipts, photographs, credit card statements. Every betrayal catalogued. Every lie documented. Evelyn, ever precise, stepped forward and handed it to the priest. This, she said clearly, is the truth. The priest hesitated, flipping open the binder. His brows furrowed as he skimmed. Receipts for hotels dated when Martin had claimed to be traveling for business. Jewelry purchases marked as client gifts. Restaurant bills signed in Martin's hand. Photographs of him and Lila together long before the divorce. The crowd stirred louder now, whispers growing sharper, like blades scraping stone. Lila faltered. Those are just misunderstandings. Business dinners. Business dinners? Evelyn snapped, her lawyer's tone slicing through. At luxury hotels? At midnight? And how do you explain this? She pulled out the photograph Isaac had taken. Martin and Lila, his hand brushing her arm, his smile wide and genuine. This was while he was still married. Shall I read the date stamped at the bottom? Lila's face flushed. Martin shifted uncomfortably, but still he tried to sneer. You think papers will change what happened between us? You think anyone cares? The priest spoke firmly now. I care, Mr. Hale. This house of God cares. And these people who came to witness a wedding care. What you brought today was not truth, it was poison. And it has been answered with proof. Thomas stepped forward then, his voice steady. Susan doesn't need to defend herself against your lies, Martin. She already did the hardest thing anyone can do. She left you. She built a life without you. She stands here today loved, respected, free. And you? His eyes cut like steel. You're still clinging to the ashes of your own betrayal. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then growing. Guests nodded, murmured in agreement. Even Amelia, one of Martin's estranged cousins seated at the edge of the pews, stood and clapped. Martin's face twisted. He rose, his voice harsh. You think this is over? You think parading receipts makes you better than me? He jabbed a finger toward me. You will always be mine, Susan. You can't erase me. I stepped forward, lifting my chin. No, Martin. You erased yourself the moment you chose lies over love. The only thing I can't erase is pity for the man you've become. The moment cracked like lightning. Martin lunged as though to snatch the binder, but Harper and two ushers blocked him. Lila shrank back, her bravado dissolving in the murmurs of disapproval around her. Evelyn lifted the bouquet box with Martin's threatening note inside, holding it high for the crowd. This, she said firmly, is intimidation. This is obsession. And this is the final proof of who Martin Hale truly is. The judge in attendance stood then, his voice heavy with authority. I have seen enough. If there is further disruption, law enforcement will be called immediately. This wedding will proceed, and it will not be marred by your bitterness. The priest turned back to us, his hands steady now. Susan, Thomas, shall we continue? I nodded. My heart still raced, but I felt a strength rising in me, stronger than fear. For once, Martin's theatrics had not stolen the stage. They had given me the chance to expose him fully. I turned to Thomas, his eyes warm and unwavering, and I knew this was no longer about survival. This was triumph. As the vows resumed, Martin sat back down, his face pale with fury. But from the look in his eyes, I knew he wasn't finished yet. And neither was my reckoning. The sound of applause faded, but the tension in the room clung like smoke. Martin sat rigid, his jaw clenched, eyes darting between the priest, the binder of evidence, and the roses now wilting on the altar rail. He looked cornered, humiliated, but not defeated, and that made him dangerous. The ceremony pressed on. The priest's voice carried over the crowd, steadier now, trying to guide everyone back into reverence. But the whispers would not stop. Did you see those receipts? She kept everything. She was right all along. The truth had sunk in. Martin's carefully crafted facade, the charming businessman, the confident husband, was in tatters. And the guests weren't just disapproving. They were disgusted. Lila tried to leave quietly, sliding toward the aisle. But Harper intercepted her, blocking the row with her sharpest glare. You came here to ruin a wedding, Harper whispered coldly. You'll stay to see it finished. Lila's cheeks flushed crimson. She looked desperately at Martin, but he avoided her gaze. The same man who had once promised her the world now left her stranded, exposed. The crowd's disdain shifted toward her too. She sank back into the pew, her shoulders collapsing. When it came time for the vows, Thomas's voice steadied me. Susan, you are the strongest person I have ever known. You showed me what it means to stand back up after being broken. Today I vow to guard your strength, not against the world, but so you can use it to build anything you dream. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from the weight of being seen, truly seen. I had waited years for words like those. Then came mine. I lifted my chin, my voice carrying clear to the back rows. Thomas, you are not my rescue. You are my partner. You are the proof that love can be patient, kind, and steady. Today, I vow not just to walk beside you, but to never again let anyone dim the light we build together. Applause rose again, louder, stronger, filling the church like a wave. But amid the clapping, a sudden crash split the air. Martin had slammed his fist onto the pew in front of him. He shot to his feet, his face twisted with rage. You think this is justice? You think parading your binder makes you a saint? You humiliated me in front of everyone I know. Ushers rushed toward him, but Martin barked louder, his voice cracking. You'll regret this, Susan. You'll regret ever crossing me. The judge in attendance rose, signaling the officers stationed at the doors. They moved quickly, stepping into the aisle. Mr. Hale, the judge thundered. One more word and you'll be escorted out under arrest. The entire church fell into hushed silence. Martin froze, his chest heaving. His eyes flicked to Lila, who shrank back, offering him no support. His mask cracked further. For the first time he looked less like a man in control and more like a man utterly alone. The priest did not falter. He lifted his voice again, calm but firm. "And so before God and these witnesses, I pronounce you husband and wife." Thomas kissed me. The applause this time was deafening, drowning out Martin's sputtering anger. Guests rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, some even weeping. The music swelled, drowning him out further. I turned to face them, standing tall beside Thomas, my veil shimmering in the light. The crowd's eyes were not on Martin anymore. They were on us. That was the deepest cut of all. As we walked back down the aisle together, arm in arm, Martin tried to rise again, but the ushers pressed him firmly back into his seat. His threats were reduced to mutters lost under the organ's triumphant chords. Lila sat frozen, her eyes wide, realizing the man she had fought for was unraveling before the entire community. The fallout was happening in real time. Martin's reputation, Lila's illusions, their partnership, it was crumbling brick by brick, right in front of everyone. Outside the church doors, sunlight poured over us. Guests spilled out, showering us with petals, laughter, congratulations. For once I felt free. But even in that freedom, I knew Martin was not finished. His fury was too sharp, his pride too wounded. As we posed for photos, Marian leaned close and whispered, "He's broken but not gone. Be ready, Susan. The day after will be harder." She was right. Weddings end, but battles often echo long after the music stops. That night after the reception, a letter slid under our hotel room door. No name, no signature. Just 5 words written in Martin's hand. "This is not the end." The morning after the wedding, the church bells were silent, the confetti swept away, and the gown folded carefully into its box. But the echoes of the night before clung to me. Martin's letter, "This is not the end," lay on the hotel nightstand, its words etched into my mind. Thomas stirred beside me, his hand warm on mine. "Ignore it," he whispered. "He's desperate. Desperation makes men loud but powerless." I wanted to believe him. Yet I knew Martin. Powerless was never a word he accepted. By mid-morning the phone calls began. Not to me but to others. Marianne called first, her voice sharp with both triumph and unease. "Susan, you should know, half the guests are already talking. They're calling yesterday a spectacle, but one where you stood tall. Everyone's telling the story, and Martin doesn't look like a victim anymore. He looks like a fool." Then Harper messaged, "Social media is exploding. Someone leaked the photo of him throwing the roses. People are mocking him, memes, jokes, the works. He's a laughingstock." Part of me wanted to smile. But humiliation can be fuel for a man like Martin. By afternoon, the consequences hit harder. Evelyn called from her office. "Susan, Martin's company accounts are frozen. Those threatening letters you kept? Combined with yesterday's display, they were enough for a judge to sign off on temporary protective orders. He's not just embarrassing himself, he's digging a legal pit under his own feet." Relief mingled with fear. It meant progress, but it also meant he would lash out. Evelyn paused before hanging up. "Keep your binder close, Susan. Everything we collected is now part of a bigger case. Yesterday was just the public crack. Today the collapse begins." The collapse was already visible. By evening, newspapers carried headlines. "Prominent businessman disrupts ex-wife's wedding." Subheadings detailed receipts, photographs, testimony. The photos of Lila in her red dress were everywhere. Her glare, her retreat. She had become the symbol of Martin's arrogance, the other woman who joined his downfall. Thomas and I sat in the living room of our hotel suite, the glow of the TV casting shadows across the floor. He muted the sound. "You don't have to watch this," he said softly. But I did. Not out of spite, but out of closure. I had lived years in silence while Martin wrote the story of who I was. Now the truth was out there, unfiltered. And it was stronger than his lies. That night Marian came by with news. "Lila left town," she said flatly. "Packed her bags, skipped out of Martin's house. I think even she realized there's no future in standing beside him anymore." I thought of the woman's laughter in my bedroom years ago. Her perfume lingering long after she was gone. For years I had imagined her as my rival. But now, seeing her reduced to a footnote in Martin's fall, I realized she was never my rival. She was his accomplice. his pawn. And pawns are always the first to be sacrificed. The next morning, as Thomas and I prepared to leave for our short honeymoon, another letter arrived. This one delivered by certified mail. Official in tone but venomous in content. Martin had filed a civil complaint. His claim, that my binder of evidence presented at the wedding, had defamed his character and ruined his reputation. Evelyn read it with a laugh. Defamed? Susan, truth cannot defame. Every page in that binder is verifiable. This isn't a complaint, it's a tantrum. Still, it was a reminder. Martin's downfall was accelerating, but he wasn't going quietly. That evening, Thomas held me on the balcony of our suite. The city stretched below us, glittering with lights. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to breathe without fear. You won, he whispered against my hair. Not because you humiliated him, but because you showed the world who you really are. Tears pricked my eyes. For so long, I had lived as the wife in the shadows, defined by someone else's betrayal. Now I was Susan, a woman with proof, with strength, with love. But as I leaned into the warmth of Thomas's arms, my phone buzzed one last time that night. A text message, no name attached, but I didn't need one. It read, "Enjoy your little victory. This isn't finished." My chest tightened as I set the phone down. Martin's empire was crumbling, but his obsession remained. The question was no longer if he would strike again, it was when and how. Weeks passed. The flowers from the wedding had long withered, the gown was carefully packed away, and Thomas and I returned from our honeymoon with sun on our faces and peace in our hearts. But the echoes of Martin's rage still lingered in the background. He tried, of course. Letters, complaints, petty filings in court. Evelyn handled each one with ease, dismantling his arguments the way a surgeon cuts away diseased tissue. Every threat he sent became another nail in the coffin of his reputation. The judge granted a permanent restraining order after the second threatening message, and suddenly Martin's booming voice of control was reduced to a muffled whisper in the shadows. Lila never returned. Rumors spread that she had moved overseas, embarrassed and burned by the scandal. His allies in business distanced themselves, and the invitations that once flooded his desk dwindled to silence. He had spent years trying to make me feel invisible, and in the end it was he who faded into irrelevance. For me, the aftermath was different. My consultancy, once small and overlooked, suddenly thrived. The story of how I carried myself through betrayal became a quiet whisper among clients, a tale of resilience that made people trust me more. I didn't plan for it, but strength leaves a mark and people notice. Thomas and I settled into our new life together. Not perfect, not easy, but honest. Every time he smiled at me across the breakfast table, every time he reached for my hand without fanfare, I remembered the difference between love that shackles and love that sets free. But perhaps the greatest transformation was internal. For years Martin's voice had lived inside me, telling me I was bitter, unwanted, worthless. That voice is gone now. It vanished the moment I stood at the altar, looked him in the eyes, and realized he no longer had power over me. I once thought revenge meant fire, fury, destruction. But the truth is, revenge is sometimes quiet. It is walking forward while the one who betrayed you is left stumbling in the past. It is not screaming back. It is simply living well, thriving, being whole again. And yes, revenge is sweeter when it is lawful, when the world sees the truth, and when you never have to look over your shoulder wondering if you sank to their level. If you are listening to my story, maybe you have lived something similar. Maybe someone told you that you were nothing without them. Maybe someone laughed at your pain or tried to erase your worth. Let me tell you now, you are not broken because they betrayed you. They are broken because they chose betrayal. Your power lies not in silence but in standing tall, in gathering your proof, in building allies, and in walking forward even when your knees shake. The world will not always cheer you, but you do not need their cheers. You need your own certainty. I found mine. The last time I saw Martin was months after the wedding. He passed me in the street, thinner, his suit ill-fitted, eyes darting away from mine. He didn't smirk. He didn't sneer. He lowered his gaze and walked past without a word. And in that moment I realized the revenge was complete. Not because I had destroyed him, but because he no longer mattered. This is my story. My name is Susan and I was betrayed. But I did not stay broken. I rebuilt, I remarried, and I rose higher than the man who tried to bury me. And to anyone who hears this, remember, the best revenge is not rage. It is dignity. It is truth. And it is living a life that proves them wrong every single day. If my story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear that betrayal is not the end. Subscribe for more stories of resilience, justice, and the power of reclaiming your voice. And never forget, you are stronger than the people who tried to silence you.